High school student Miko Yatsuyo wakes up to get dressed for her classes. While brushing her teeth, she notices a handprint on her mirror. After cleaning off the prints, Miko makes her way out when her mother reminds her to carry an umbrella. Not caring much about the weather, she tells her mother that if it starts to pour, she'll just get an umbrella at the convenience store. Arriving at the school, Miko is greeted by her voluptuous friend, Hana, who immediately compliments her new keychain. The following day, Miko and Hana sit down for lunch when her friend makes a comment on how the clock has stopped working and the fluorescent lights keep on flickering. Unlike Hana, Miko doesn't think of it much. With the day coming to an end, Miko and Hana part ways at the junction to go their separate ways. All of a sudden, Miko notices that her brand new keychain is missing from her bag. Now prompted to make her way back to school, Miko begins to search for the keychain in the eerily quiet classroom. After spotting it, she quickly grabs the keychain and runs out of the school in the pouring rain. While waiting for her bus, Miko clenches her soaked skirt in an attempt to dry it out. Deciding to distract herself, she opens her phone to read a text from Hana. After sending a picture to her friend, Miko's phone starts to glitch, causing her snapshot to turn into a disfigured creature. Appalled by the image, Miko throws away the phone in horror. Once calm takes over her, Miko picks up the phone and dubs the whole situation as her mind playing tricks on her. Then all of a sudden, an unsightly phantom appears right in front of her. While staring directly in her orbs, the aspiration asks Miko if she can see him. Through trembling hands, Miko opens her phone to pretend as if she doesn't see the hideous figure looming over her. Once the spirit comes to the conclusion that she can't see him, he instantly vanishes. With the phantom gone, Miko breaks into terrified shivers. After finally making it home, Miko immediately rushes to her bathroom to wash off the events of the day. She notices a handprint on her mirror again and proceeds to wipe it when suddenly another spirit appears behind her. He places his hand on the mirror and asks Miko if she can see him. Like before, Miko pretends to not notice the ghost and her way to the bed. As she lies down to sleep, Miko realizes that the spirit has made himself comfortable under the sheets. The next day, Miko's morning starts off like any ordinary day, but once she makes it to school, she comes across another spirit. In the changing room, Hana and Miko hear about a television show featuring scary stories. When Hana hears about how a severed head was found in a locker, she insists Miko open the locker for her. For once, relief takes Miko's countenance when she finds the locker to be empty. Just as Hana expresses her happiness, Miko's eyes shift towards the gigantic head staring down at her. Quickly turning away from the horrifying sight, Miko tells herself that she'll be just fine if she keeps on ignoring the spirits. However, with fate being her #1 antagonist, Miko is prompted to make another contact with the ghost when Hana asks her to retrieve the phone for her. After retrieving the phone, Miko falls to her knees, wishing for the spirits to stop appearing in front of her. Later in class, Hana discloses to Miko that while changing, she forgot to put on her underpants. Hana's forgetfulness lightens up her mood. Miko even begins to think that since the spirits are just lurking around without any malevolent intentions, she should be okay. Right in that moment, an apparition latches itself to Hana's body. Despite her attempts to pry off the spirit from Hana's body, she ends up failing her mission. Meanwhile, oblivious to the phantom stuck on her body, Hana begins to playfully check Miko with a stethoscope. Just then, Miss Kiddo walks in the clinic and orders the girls to go back to their classes. Once the ghost sees the curvy nurse, he immediately latches himself on her body. Later that day, Miko and Hana stumble upon a stray kitten. When Hana picks the kitten from its box, Miko sees a rotten spirit nesting with the feline. After posting the cat for an adoption, a scary-looking man appears in the park. At the same time, a young boy approaches the girls for the adoption. As someone who can see the unseen, Miko immediately sees the boy's foul spirit. Instead of handing the cat over to him, Miko gives the feline to the intimidating man. After taking a blood-curdling bus ride with the phantom, Miko finds herself waiting for Hana in a coffee shop. There, she sees a flirtatious young boy with a jealous ghost attached to him. When the boy looks at Miko seductively, the spirit becomes jealous and comes over to confront her. To ward her off, Miko turns to her phone and pretends to simp for a wrestler. Once the spirit sees this, she lets her jealousy subside. With Hana's arrival, Miko immediately takes off from the cafe. After buying prayer needs for herself, she places a pear on Hana's hand. As a thank you, Hana decides to buy Miko her favorite sweets. She takes her in an alleyway filled with decaying spirits. Confident in her prayer beads, Miko makes her way in the dark alley. A phantom stronger than the rest blocks her path and breaks apart the beads. Despite being terrified of the spirits, Miko gathers up her guts and protects Hana from the imminent danger. After making out of the alley in one piece, Hana treats Miko to the sweet buns. For a moment, Miko allows herself to enjoy the simpler pleasures of life. Hana then drags Miko to an elderly woman's shop that sells spiritual beads. The woman immediately notices the shadow lurking around her and decides to help Miko out by giving her stronger prayer beads. She tells Miko that she can have it for free as she helped her revive her old self. All of a sudden, the spirit grows aggressive, causing the prayer beads to break again. While walking back home, Miko realizes that the evil spirit has stopped following her. One night, Miko steps out of her house to buy cold drinks for herself and her brother, Kyusuk. When she accidentally drops her 500 yen coin, she ends up discovering the ghost of a tiny old man. Taken aback by the cuteness of the spirit, Miko makes the impulsive decision to follow him to an alleyway. There, she ends up stumbling on a much larger visitant. As she tries to pick up the coin with quivering hands, the ghost lets out a menacing smoke from his mouth. All of a sudden, a crow appears like her guardian angel and snoops up the coin, giving Miko the chance to escape. Next day at school, Kyusuk tells his friend about how his older sister is acting differently. A classmate of his overhears the conversation and joins in by saying that Miko probably has a boyfriend. Once he hears this, Kyusuk makes it his mission to find Miko's boyfriend. While tailing her sister, Kyusuk reaches a bookstore. Miko, on the other hand, picks up a book but quickly puts it back when she senses the malevolent presence of a spirit. After making it home, she decides to unwind by taking a bath. A ghost emerges from the water, causing Miko to turn pale with fear. With the intention of checking his sister's body for kiss marks, Kyusuk opens the bathroom door. Miko uses this opportunity and asks her brother to stay with her. The next day, Miko greets her parents and brother on the dining table. As her father talks about how he accidentally ate her pudding last year, Miko loses her appetite when a ghost looks overhead. She takes out the pudding from her fridge and places it on her father's memorial. Her father apologizes to her for never reconciling with her, which makes her tear up. Yuria Nigurdu makes her way over to the exorcist godmother Mitsu Takeda. She pleads with the elderly woman to take her in as a disciple. In order to get the girl off of her back, Mitsu hands her prayer beads and tells Yuria to be on her way. As she skips happily back home, Yuria notices a spirit but decides to ignore it. Being able to see spirits from a young age, Yuria realized that her destiny is to become an exorcist. The next day, she gets a shock when she sees that the exorcist godmother's shop closed. A nearby shopkeeper reveals to her that Mitsu packed up and left for her village after tending to her last customers, Miko and Hana. Knowing the girls from school, Yuria watches Miko protect Hana from a spirit. After spying on her for days, she musters up the courage to confront Miko about her sight. Yuria places shiny objects to attract the tiny ghosts and then pressures Miko into admitting the truth. However, unlike Yuria, Miko has the misfortune of seeing the nastier ghosts. When the menacing spirit gets a whiff of Yuria's power of sight, Miko puts the girl in chokehold to stop her from attracting the ghost. When Yuria wakes up, Miko advises her that it's better to ignore the spirits and takes her leave. Meanwhile, Yuria dubs the whole conversation as Miko threatening her. She makes up her mind that she will never forgive Miko. After devouring pancakes, Hana cheerfully exits her apartment, completely oblivious to the huge apparition following her. The spirit tests Hana's powerful aura by placing a lesser ghost on her body. Due to her intense energy, the small ghost instantly gets fried. On the street, Hana comes across a boy crying his eyes out. When she kindly asks him the reason for his tears, the boy tells her that his dog ran into the building. Despite knowing the building's reputation of being cursed, a determined but terrified Hana makes her way inside to find Chico the dog. After searching for a while, she manages to fetch the dog. Once the dog is reunited with the kid, Hana runs to meet Miko. When Miko sees Hana approaching, her pupils dial in horror as she also sees the scary ghost coming with Hana. Out of options, Miko takes Hana to a shrine where she witnesses a deity eat the nasty phantom. Once the fight is over, Miko freezes in terror as the deity does something to her. Determined to salvage her dignity and build her reputation as a strong psychic in front of Miko, Yuria approaches Hana, who suddenly developed an interest in photography. She tells the bubbly girl that she knows a picturesque location. Excited by the news, Hana immediately takes Yuria in a big hug. After taking the girls in the mountains, Yuria tells Hana that she'll be able to capture pictures once they cross the tunnel. Unaware of the fact that the tunnel is a famous hunting spot, the girls blindly follow Yuria inside the tunnel. When Miko accidentally slips, Yuria misinterprets her fall as a ritual to ward off evil spirits. As the spirits start to emerge after getting a whiff of Hana's energy, Miko insists on going back. Yuria, on the other hand, refuses to back down and convinces Hana to stay. When an evil spirit shows up and begins to gobble up the lesser spirits, Yuria ends up thinking that it's all Miko's doing. Meanwhile, Miko freezes in pure horror as she watches the menacing ghost grow powerful. In order to protect the girls, Miko pulls them near her body. All of a sudden, the shrine spirits emerge from the ground and save the day. As the girls make their way home, Yuria, for the first time in a long time, enjoys the company of friends. While out shopping for presents, Miko encounters a phantom carrying an axe on the bus. He goes through the people sitting next to Miko one by one. hacking the axe in their heads. Afraid to move a muscle, Miko's eyes begin to water. When the ghost uses the axe on the woman next to her, Miko notices a spirit emerging out of her. The phantom immediately puts the spirit in his bag and slashes Miko next. After removing the axe, the ghost moves on to the next person. The next day, Miko and Hana converse with their homeroom teacher, Miss Arai. Hana tells her how she's going to miss her once she's gone on maternity leave. All of a sudden, Miko notices a faceless spirit gravitating around Miss Aray's pregnant belly. Out of concern for her teacher, Miko tells her to be careful. Touched by Miko's care, Miss Arai reveals that she lost her baby before and plans to love her baby twofold to make up for her lost child. The following night, Miko finds herself in a mental debate on whether she should ignore the spirits or face them head-on. The next day, her eyes widen in horror as she watches the evil man she met in the park introduce himself as their new teacher. As Miko sees her teacher, Zen, in the hallway, she notices handprints across the windowsill following him. Terrified by the sight, Miko rushes to the bathroom to hide herself. Inside the stall, she clutches her skirt and wonders if she will be able to keep up her pretense every day with Zen around her. While hiding in the cubicle, a huge phantom appears from the commode. When she notices the empty roll, Miko loudly excuses herself to fetch some toilet paper. After opening the next cubicle, she finds Yuria eating her lunch. Later on, Miko regroups with Hana and advises Yuria to not eat her lunch in the toilet. Her gaze shifts towards Zen pacing in the hallways. All of a sudden, a ghost appears behind her and tells her to not look. After school, the girls make their way to a horror house to win some food stamps. Miko goes inside with the intention of strengthening her tolerance for spooky stuff. After facing many trials, she allows herself to scream for the first time. Almost instantly, Miko tastes the sweet fruit of liberation. When the real deal presents itself, Miko loudly tells the apparition to not come any closer. With that, Miko and her friends make their way out of the horror house. When his neighbor greets him by handing out some beef stews and politely thanks her for her generosity, the woman begins complaining to him about how someone has been harming the cats from the park. She stops once she notices blood on Zen's hand. Zen excuses himself by saying that he broke a cup. After throwing away a white plastic bag, he makes his way to school. In class, Miko notices the ghost telling the oblivious girls to not look. When Zen asks her to read, the apparition comes close to her and repeatedly tells her to not look. As tears begin to emerge from her eyes, making her voice waver with every word, Miko pushes herself to endure the torment. All of a sudden, Zen comes close to her. With some dumb luck, Hana's stomach rumbles loudly, which gives Miko an opportunity to escape with her to the infirmary. Later on, while Hana happily munches on a burger, Miko comes to the conclusion that Hana's life force is affected by Zen's presence. Realizing that her friend got sick because of it, Miko finds herself in an internal turmoil and ends up making contact with the spirit of a young boy. As the apparition malevolently runs to harm her, the shrine spirits reappear to eliminate the boy's spirit. Miko recalls her run-in at the shrine and realizes that the spirit shrines will only protect her 3 times. Now left with one lifeline, Miko begins to worry about what's to come. Zen recalls his childhood and his estranged relationship with his mother. His students call for him, causing him to break away from his thoughts. After school, Miko decides to follow Zen in order to find a way to get rid of him. As she begins to tail him, Miko notices the nasty spirit latched onto her teacher. Zen stops to look at a cat. Miko grows apprehensive and decides to intervene by shouting at him to stop. Once the cat runs to Miko, Zen confronts her by asking her why she didn't give him the feline before. Unable to answer him, Miko runs off with the cat. While running away, she ends up stumbling, which causes her to fall. Zen appears shortly and demands her to reveal the reason behind her actions. The confrontation comes to an abrupt pause when the cat runs off on the busy road. Just when a car is about to hit it, Zen rushes to save the cat and ends up getting hit. During his stay in the hospital, Zen thinks about his younger days and how he found a friend in a cat until his mother found it and killed it. When Miko appears by his side, Zen reveals that he thought she was harming the cats. Once his friend Satoru appears, Miko learns from him how Zen's mother would often control him and tell his friends to not look at him. In that moment, Miko realizes that the ghost she sees with Zen is none other than his mother. She finally decides to confront the evil spirit by acknowledging her presence. Once the spirit tries to harm her, the shrine spirits appear to eliminate the ghost. Once Zen recovers from his injuries, he takes the cat from Miko to raise it. Not only does he overcome his childhood fears, he also learns to be honest with his feelings. For the first time ever, he tells his neighbor that he hates her stew and finds it disgusting. Later on, while patrolling the area, Zen finally catches the culprit behind the missing cats. Meanwhile, Miko has a dream about the shrine spirits turning against her. When she wakes up, Miko realizes that nothing has changed in her life. She is still able to see the creepy spirits around her, and she has yet to figure out why she suddenly awakened this sight. One thing that has changed for Miko is that she has come to the decision to face the phantoms head-on. On that cue, Hana hugs her from behind, and with Yuria's arrival, the girls begin to discuss their after-school plans. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing to the channel and stay tuned for more quality uploads.